when I was growing up, I had all these questions about why airplanes are designed the way they are, questions a lot of pilots have about why do you really need a horizontal stabilizer pushing down, and why do small airplanes tend to have propellers and big airplanes tend to have jet engines, and why aren't more airplanes flying wings or having economics or electric or things like that. And I went to college and studied engineering and learned the answers to these questions. And then there are a lot of things that are like, you can totally explain this to a normal person. You learn this in college and it's in this thick textbook full of intimidating equations, but there's no reason why I can't just explain that to someone else and say, here's the basic forces at play, and this is why you need this kind of solution for this case, or that kind of solution for that mission. So I created this course, right, called Understanding Airplanes, which I teach, it's not over Boeing, so I teach inside Boeing, but I used to teach it before, even in college, and I teach outside once in a while. It's very much basic airplane design or why airplanes are designed the way they are, targeted at non-engineers. That's actually the source of a lot of these talks. So the original course was like 16 hours long, and I've gradually trimmed it down to an 8-hour thing that I do today. But then all the other stuff is still kind of interesting. I nice to present it once in a while. So this is one of those talks I used to be part of the course. A lot of the stuff that I cut out from the course since the beginning is stuff that's kind of not very mainstream. So stealth technology or vertical takeoff and landing or things like that. So I'll go ahead and get started. I guess I should also say that I kind of marketed this as secrets of stealth airplane design, although in reality, as hopefully you guys can probably guess, the part I'll be talking about is actually the part that isn't secret, right? It's the part that's public domain. And at the end, I'll list all the books that I've read, plus some more, where I learned all this stuff from. So I've never actually worked in stealth airplane design myself. I've just read the books that you can read and learned enough of a general idea that I think it's really interesting and worth passing on. So we'll talk about, I think I start passing on the prompts, but I'll wait. So stealth aircraft design, low observability is again a technical military term, and there are 4 key ways to make an airplane harder to detect by the enemy, right? I guess to give a big picture view, you guys I'm sure know this, but a lot of general audiences don't. I get this talk to. This is for military applications. This is if you're flying an airplane into combat and you don't want the enemy to see it coming. So there are 4 key ways to do that. One is to reduce the visibility of your airplane to the eyeball. The other one is to make your airplane quiet, or at least you don't hear it until it goes by. The third one, and this starts getting a little bit more high-tech, is to lower your infrared emissions, because there are a lot of very sensitive heat-seeking kinds of sensors out there that will see from very, very far away. And the fourth one, which is what people usually think of when we talk about stealth, is reducing the airplane's radar cross-section. So that if you shine a radar at it, the radar won't have a good reflection. Won't be able to lock onto you, tell enemy forces where you are. So the stealth technology includes all these 4 things, but the word usually means radar cross-section, maybe infrared. And so how do you reduce the radar cross-section? We'll talk about each of these things in detail. Just to give you an overview at the beginning. How do you reduce your radar cross-section? It breaks down to passive wave cancellation and active wave cancellation. So those are similar to things like sound insulation in the wall or noise-reducing headphones. You have waves coming in, and there's certain properties of the material or certain kinds of electronics that will create waves that cancel them out. The other one is radar-absorbent materials. So just as some things are black and some things are white, some things absorb radar light and some things reflect radar light. So if you can figure out which materials absorb the radar radiation, probably want to put those in your airplane. And really the key one, the most important one, we'll almost spend most time talking about is having a shape that will reflect radar away from the source rather than back at its source. So that's really the key part. And that's what causes stealth airplanes to look interesting the way they do. So we'll just jump right in. I'll pretty much go down this list here. So the first approach to stealth, to making the aircraft detect, is camouflage. And that goes back to World War I, before that. And it can actually be pretty effective if you do it right. This is pretty obvious. You try to paint the airplane to look like the terrain behind it. But there are some levels of not quite obvious to it, right? For example, one of them is you might want to paint the top of your airplane darker and the bottom of your airplane lighter, right? That wildcat over there. So that if enemies are flying around trying to find it, if you look at it from above, it's up against the terrain, so you want it to be dark. And if you're below, you're looking up, you want it to be light because it's up against the sky. And then this is something that animals do, like little fish and sharks and so on. They're colored that way. Seabirds. They evolutionarily found that same technique. Another one is just given the atmosphere and the haze and the air, the kinds of things that are in the air, the sky has a certain color. So if an airplane is flying, it's flying around and you're trying to see it, well, what color would cause the airplane to be least visible against the sky? Would it be a light color, or a dark color, or a pale color? And different people have actually run studies to find out which color is actually least visible against the sky. The British did that during World War II, and they actually tried pink and found that actually that shade of pink actually has very low visibility against the sky. So there wasn't any pink Spitfire and tanks and things like that. And what they found is actually that pale colors are least visible. So not necessarily pink, but pale grays. If you look at tens or a lot of attack helicopters, and then most of the marine aircraft are all painted this kind of pale gray because that's what fades away the most quickly into the sky. So it can't be picked up visually as easily. And actually, training airplanes used to be painted like yellow and orange, right? Because they thought that those colors were very visible. But one of the studies is that actually black airplanes are the most visible against the daylight sky. So actually, a lot of training airplanes are painted black around the world because those are the easiest to pick out against the sky during the day. Something else you see all these airplanes as blobs. So they are going to be light gray with some dark gray blobs. And what that is basically trying to undo the shading that you get from the sun, right? If you have sunlight, the surfaces that are pretty much horizontal get illuminated most brightly. The surfaces that are vertical on the sides get illuminated less brightly, a little darker, right? If you imagine drawing an airplane, that's how you shade, right? So if you paint the airplane in a way that undoes that, the horizontal surface is a little darker and the sloping sides a little lighter, you kind of take away some of the contrasty shade that makes the airplane easy to pick out. So you see a lot of these blobs on fighters and UAVs. I think the single most interesting aspect of low visibility coloring that I've learned about is this idea that as an airplane flies higher and higher and higher, there's more atmosphere between you and the airplane, so more and more haze, more dust, more oxygen. But also, air scatters light. So in that airplane looking down is seeing air that's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. Right? If you've seen pictures taken from the edge of space, whether it's a U-2 or a spacecraft, and you see that kind of that band of the atmosphere that's dark up here, right? If you're flying kind of at the edge of the atmosphere, there's a lot of air that's basically glowing and illuminating you from underneath. What it means is that actually the higher an airplane is supposed to fly for its mission, the darker you want to paint it to undo the effect of that glow from underneath. Like sometimes, on a clear day you look up and you see an airliner at 30,000 feet, 35,000 feet, it always looks white. And unless you paint it basically black, it's going to look white because it has a lot of air under it that's diffusing light and scattering light up back into it. So high-flying airplanes are always going to look white unless they don't want to be seen, in which case they're painted black. And so if you look at military airplanes, if you look at the B-2 and the Blackbird and the B-52 and so on, they get that kind of dark gray color if part of their mission is flying at 30,000 feet or 60 or 70, 90,000 feet for the B-2, because that actually makes them least visible. If they were any brighter than dark gray or black, you look up and you'd see a white dot, right? As you do with airliners plus that mission. So that's all I'm going to say about visual, stealth or camouflage or low visibility. Another thing that's worth talking about is noise. That's not something that many airplanes are really designed around, but research has been done into making airplanes as quiet as possible. So NASA had during the Vietnam War, NASA had the X-26 program where they took a glider and put different kinds of engines on it, different kinds of propellers, and they really worked hard they kept switching things out and testing different radiator shapes, like I said, different propeller shapes, propellers with lots of blades going at lower RPM, or wider blades, or different kinds of engines put in different places. And the design that they eventually reached at the end of this program, saying was the quietest, is the Y-3. We have one of them using the flight room. If you've seen it, just goes up here in Everett, the restoration center. And so that airplane, which was a modified glider, was designed to be as quiet as possible. They actually took them to Vietnam, and they would do nighttime recon missions, right over in the camps, about 1,000 feet off the ground, and taking pictures and noticing who was where and where forces were, and they were not detected because it was basically absolutely quiet. So if you're flying this at night with your lights off, without any, especially if it's cloudy or if there's no full moon, they cannot be detected. So it's interesting to think about an airplane that it was basically designed to be as quiet as possible, and then actually successfully deployed in military operations where it was not picked up at night. even though it was flying at very, very low altitudes. I think that's kind of cool. And it was actually used for a few different purposes after that. So NASA did some research after the Vietnam War in different states, like the Department of Forestry and so on. They were flying around, looking around, how to use this airplane. So if you want to learn more about it, go to the Museum of Flight. There's one actually there. It looks very interesting. Like it was designed to fly it. It's kind of cool. So the next one I'm going to talk about, getting more into the modern age, is infrared detection. So not only are there, heat-seeking missiles that try to find, the bright spot of an airplane, glowing engine and exhaust to try to find it, but especially nowadays there are, more and more airplanes that have infrared cameras that some kind of FLIR or IRS, or there's these different kind of systems that are basically very powerful cameras that see in the infrared. And part of that is because aircraft engines tend to be much hotter than anything else around. So if you're basically looking for temperature, you're going to pick up a lot of infrared radiation from them. And part of it too is that certain frequencies of infrared radiation do actually go through the air without being diffused or absorbed very well all the time. So some of these cameras can pick up an aircraft from tens of miles away. It's comparable to a radar. So these are very sensitive. And when you go to air shows, and different companies will take these cameras and find the airplanes flying around. So there's a lot of dramatic footage online of airplanes flying around with the infrared cameras, detecting them. You can see really how hot they are. You can see, even an airplane that you don't think it's having very hot exhaust, like an airline, will glow very bright in those cameras. Very easy to pick out. You can totally imagine how to pick out many miles away. Now there are a couple more interesting things about infrared detectability that I meant to say here in this talk and I forgot. So let me just pause the video here and I'll add them in real quick. One is that while some frequencies of infrared radiation travel through the air very easily without a lot of loss, you can see them from many miles away, there are some other frequencies of infrared radiation that do not travel so well through the air, that the air absorbs or scatters them. Air is like a fog that hides the sources of those frequencies. You can't really see through it. And of course, we know how to use that to our advantage, right? Well, what frequencies of infrared radiation are emitted at each temperature, say the temperatures are on a jet engine, depends on the material. Some materials, when you heat them to those temperatures, will emit infrared radiation in frequencies that travel through the air very easily and that you can see from tens of miles away. But some other materials, when you heat it to those temperatures, will emit infrared radiation that the air will absorb or scatter. So you probably want to paint your airplanes using those materials, right? If you paint your airplanes using the right kind of materials, when they turn on the jet engine and it heats up, it'll emit infrared radiation in frequencies that the air will scatter or absorb. So you can significantly reduce your airplane's detectability by these infrared sensors and cameras and heat-seeking missiles and so on, just by covering it or painting it with materials that, when they get heated up to the temperatures that your airplane see while it's being operated, emits infrared in frequencies that the air will scatter or absorb. So that's one thing that I forgot to say. Another thing that I forgot to say is, well, if these infrared cameras and sensors can only pick up an airplane or a helicopter that's tens of miles away, while a radar could pick up an aircraft that's hundreds of miles away, then why do some airplanes and helicopters and missiles have these infrared cameras and sensors instead of a radar? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that the infrared sensors and cameras and heat-seeking systems and so on are smaller and cheaper and more lightweight than a radar. So that's obviously good for aircraft. The second reason, and this is a more interesting one, is that these infrared systems are passive, right? Radar is active. To use radar, we'll talk about this in a second, but to use radar you have to emit radar energy and detect whatever energy bounces back at you from which you emitted, right? It's like a submarine sonar ping or a camera flash, right? If you use it, everyone can see it, can see that you use it, and can see where you are. There are some new technologies that allow radars that have a narrower beam, like a spotlight or like a cop radar gun right on the highway. But even then, when you use it, at least your target can see that you're using it. But infrared cameras and sensors are totally passive. They're like binoculars, right? You can use it, and they won't help anyone else find out that you're there or see where you are, which of course is part of the whole point here for stealth. Alrighty, I think that's everything interesting that I forgot. So now back to our regularly scheduled video here. So what do you do about that? The main thing you can do, and you see a lot of military airplanes doing this, is mix up the exhaust air with the air. So if you have, instead of having that round nozzle that's the most aerodynamic efficient, if you have a flattened nozzle, or if you have different kinds of ramps or paddles that will kind of swirl in the fresh air and have your hot exhaust air not be in a concentrated, tight volume for very long, that'll help. And then other things you can do is try to tighten the engine using the tail fins or something like that. If you have the engine tucked away in the middle of the airplane or the top of the airplane, such that it's not visible from below most of the time, that'll help too. But yeah, most self-airplanes have some kind of flattened nozzle like this, which again, you lose a little bit of thrust, but your infrared signature goes down quite a bit. So that helps make you less harder to detect. Okay, so now I'll talk about radar, and this is the one that's we'll talk about for a little longer because it's, again, when people say stealth, this is usually what they mean. And so how do you make an airplane? Hard to pick up on radar. And before I even get into this, let me pass around a couple of props, and you'll see where this is going. So let me pass around a Christmas ornament, and this is a little fragile, so obviously, be careful. And what I want you to notice about the Christmas ornament is that as you turn it around in your hand, no matter what angle you're looking at it from, let's look at it dead on from this way, no matter what angle you look at it from, you see a reflection of yourself right in the middle. And I know most of you guys know this, but I actually want you to look at yourself in your hand and get some physical intuition for what this phenomenon is like, because it's going to become very important in a second. And the other one is just a normal mirror. And the mirror, it's kind of the opposite of the Christmas ornament in the sense that you can only see yourself from a very specific angle, right? If the angle of the mirror is just off, you're going to see something else in the room. But if you point it at just the right angle, you can see your reflection. So again, I know you look at yourself in the mirror often, but I want you to, think about this physical phenomenon for just a minute, because it's going to come into play right here. So radar waves or radar photons is the same as light, right? It's electromagnetic radiation, it's just at a different frequency. So the way that radar works is very similar to the way that light works, the way that we see things, right? So how do we see things? We see things because there are sources of light, like the sun or light bulbs, that shoot photons in all directions, and they bounce off of all the things around us. If it's, things are lit up, if it's daytime, if we have the lights on. And so each thing is hit by photons, and then these photons go off from each object in every direction. So wherever you are, this podium is sending photons off in every direction. So they find over here, I can still see it because there are some podium photons coming this way. And if I'm standing over here, I can see it because there are some podium photons coming that way. So each object is receiving or is hit by photons from the light bulbs and the sun, and then emitting photons in every direction. And our eyes will pick those up. And that's how we see things. The other thing we can think about is, so the radar doesn't quite work that way because there isn't a giant radar source in the sky. So radar is more like you're out at night and you're trying to find something. What if you're out at night and it's dark and you're trying to find something? You probably have a flashlight, right? You're shining that beam around and hoping that beam lands on the thing you're looking for. Right? The classic example of the comparison is a lighthouse. So a lighthouse, at night will swing will spin a beam of light around itself, and it's maybe on an island, there's a lot of water, and you want to make sure the ships don't hit rocks, and you want to see where the ships are. So most of the time the light's going around, you don't see anything, but if there's a ship there, the light will hit the ship, the photons will hit the ship, and the ship will bounce the photons off in many directions, and some will come back towards you. So the radar works kind of like a lighthouse. It's sending out a beam of photons, and if that beam of photons hits something, then some of those will bounce back in the direction that they came. And the receiver, which in the lighthouse can be a person, the radar is a radar receiver, will see those reflected photons and go, there's something there. Right? So radar really works the same way as a lighthouse on different frequencies. So the last thing I want to talk about as far as light and how you see things is how are shiny objects different from dull objects, from matte objects, right? The difference is that something that's dull, when light hits it, light goes, the photons will bounce off in every direction. So if this, actually things are kind of shiny. If this pen is kind of dull, the blue pen right here, that means that when light hits it, the photons bounce off fairly evenly in every direction. So the intensity of the light that I see on the pen from this way, or from this way, or from this way, all looks about the same. But when things are shiny and light hits them, most of the light will bounce off roughly at the same angle that it came in. It's like a ball bouncing off the wall, right? The angle that it comes out is about the same as the angle that it came in. Which means that, for example, this thing here is shining, then from a certain angle, if light's coming from that way, from a certain angle it's going to look brighter, because I can see the glow of the light from the outside. But from most other angles, it looks a little darker, right? So there's some reflectivity to it. So when you say something's reflecting light, usually mean that the light is bouncing off mostly the same way it came in. So for dull things, they can be lit from any direction and they'll be visible from every direction. But shiny things will be more visible, will look brighter from certain directions than others, right? You can see a glint or a sparkle or something like that. And so now I'm getting to what we're talking about. Yeah, most airplane materials behave more like shiny things. So if you imagine radar photons or radar waves hitting an airplane, they will bounce off the airplane in a similar way to how light bounces off a shiny or mirrored surface. So you can start thinking of things that way. So how do you make an airplane hard to see, right? So getting back to the little props that I passed around here, notice how with the Christmas ornament, from whatever angle, you can see a reflection of yourself in the building. Why is that? Because photons are from the sun or from the light bulbs are, absorbed by your face and scattered in every direction. So you have photons coming from your face towards, in every direction, moving towards the ornament. And some of them, well, the ones that hit kind of near the edge will hit the ornament and bounce away, right? But some photons, the ones that hit the ornament right in the middle, will bounce back towards your face. So the middle of the ornament, because of the angle that it is relative to you, the photons coming from your face will hit the ornament and come back to your face. And that's how you see the reflection there, right? While the mirror, all the photons from your face that hit the mirror bounce off in the same direction. So if the mirror is in any other angle, you won't see it. But if the mirror is at perfectly perpendicular to that path, if the mirror is at 90 degrees to the path from your face to the mirror, then the photons will go from your face to the mirror and back to your face, and then you see the reflection. So from the mirror, that only works at a certain specific angle, and it's 90 degrees. Right? Whenever you see a photograph of someone taking a picture of themselves in the mirror and they're holding the camera, the place where the camera is on the mirror is the place where there's a perfect 90-degree path, or where the surface of the mirror is exactly perpendicular to the line from the camera to the mirror. And then other surfaces that are not quite spherical and not quite perfectly flat are somewhere in between. So most surfaces, like most airplane surfaces, they're not spherical, they're not perfectly flat, they're somewhere in between. So if you imagine like a spoon, you put somewhere in between. There's a range of angles where you can see your reflection off the spoon, but it's not any angle, it's not just one perfect angle. One thing you can do even, and it is what I said, so if you have a flat surface, you have to be at 90 degrees of the surface, otherwise the photons from your face will bounce off in a different direction and you won't see the reflection. But if you have a curved surface, from any direction, there's some point on the curved surface that will be at 90 degrees to you, and at least those photons will bounce back to your face, and you'll see a little reflection there. So that already is enough to start thinking about, why do you shape stealth airplanes this way? Most airplanes are shaped like this. Most airplanes have lots of circles. But stealth airplanes don't. They tend to be flattened. And why is that? Well, it's because most photons hitting a flattened surface will bounce away from the direction they came, unless that flattened surface happens to be at 90 degrees, which is where the photons came from. So one way that I like to think about this is, let's draw a red zone of places where if you shoot photons at the thing, what's the red zone shape around the thing? So if you shoot photons at the thing, they'll come back to you, right? So if you have the round Christmas ornament or some kind of round shiny thing, from anywhere around that object, if you shoot photons at it, something will come back to you. But if you have a flattened thing, the extreme would be a mirror where that zone is just a rectangle. If you have a flattened thing, the red zone where if you shoot photons at it, they come back to you is really just a much narrower set of angles perpendicular to the surface. If you're outside of this red zone and you shoot photons at the thing, they'll bounce away from you and you won't see the reflection. Right? So for the mirror, it would be a rectangular beam. If you're within that beam, you can see a reflection, but if you're not, you can't. So flat airplanes will have a much narrower set of directions where radar will hit it and come back the way it came. And they actually discovered this by accident in the late 40s and early 50s, where they started flying things like the Northrop Flying Wings and the Vulcan. These airplanes would actually disappear from the radar scopes sometimes, and they didn't really know why. So they were stealthy by accident, just because they happened to. They were designed this way for aerodynamic purposes. And then it turned out that at certain angles or the range of angles where you couldn't see them on the radar was higher than most other airplanes, and they basically have to be closer to the radar for you to pick them up than other airplanes. Once they started getting a little bit far away, you couldn't see them anymore. So they were kind of accidental stealthy, and that without even trying. So that shows you how important it is to have that flat shape in the difference that it makes. So the first explicit attempt to make a stealth airplane was, use flat, faceted surfaces, like F-117. And you can see, and people say, oh, they did this because the early software that computed the radar return on a given shape, was in the late 70s. It didn't have a lot of computing power. It didn't really model flat polygons. That's part of it. But an even bigger part, in light of what we were just talking about, is that, think about what are the places where if you shot photons at these surfaces, you get photons bouncing straight back to you. And it's only the places that are perpendicular to, to one of these surfaces, right? If you have a shape that's shaped like this, the red zones of areas that are perpendicular to one of these surfaces, either perpendicular to this facet over here, or perpendicular to this facet over here, or perpendicular to this facet over here. And so most of the volume of space is somewhere in between in the white, right? So once you shot photons at these flat faceted surfaces, most of them will bounce away from you, unless you happen to be perfectly lined up with one of the flat surfaces, which you would only be for a fraction of a second if the airplane is moving, right? Unlike a round airplane where wherever you are, you're going to shoot photons at it, and it will come back to you. So just from this idea of what are these red zones like, what are the regions of space where if you shot volume a shape, or shot photons at a shape, some of them come back to you, you can kind of see how faceted surfaces will limit that and will reduce that. And something else that you see in stealth airplanes is these serrated edges or lined edges, right? So the B-2 is probably the classic example of the lined edges, right? All of the edges are only in like two directions in this whole airplane. They're all lined up, they're all parallel. And most stealth airplanes have at least groups of edges in a limited number of directions. And so, for example, instead of having the edge of the bomb bay be in this direction, they serrated it so that it would be parallel to the wing edges and the trailing edges. Now, why is that? Well, along the same lines, if it is possible for a radar to hit an edge and be reflected off that edge. So if the edge is straight, then you're only going to get those photons bouncing back towards you if you're the radar, right? The radar only goes back to the receiver, back to the emitter, if the radar is at 90 degrees to that edge, if the edge is flat. And most of the times it won't be. In addition to that, if you group the edges into aligned groups, then you reduce the number of directions that are perpendicular to any part of the airplane. If there's fewer groups of edges, then, for example, typical kind of F-22 style stealth fighter planform looks like this. So, for example, all the red edges, let's say, are aligned. That means that only if you're within somewhere inside this red beam and you shoot photons at the airplane, will the radar bounce back towards you. If you're outside of the red beam, then the red edges will bounce photons away from you. And only if you're in the relatively narrow green beams over here, will you shoot the side of the airplane from the side and come straight back towards you. And again, from the back, it's the blue ones. And these beams, they get a little wider. It's not perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect 90-degree angle. There's a little bit of scatter, so these beams get a little wider as they go out. But most of the space will be in the white, regions between the beams. So if you align the edges, then that means that there's only these narrow sets of directions where you get a lot of radar reflection. And if you're anywhere else and you shoot radar photons at the airplane, they will bounce away from you. And let's see, what else I want to say? Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. So, and then again, even if you are in one of these red beams and you shoot photons at the back of you, that'll only happen for an instant because the airplane is flying. So those are the key principles. There's a few other things that are relatively minor. Another one is not having right angles. So where's that mirror that I was passing around? Let me try something. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like when you walk past a store window or if you're in a gym and you're at a dance studio or something where they have mirrors or something shining on two walls at a 90-degree angle. And as you walk, you see your reflection kind of stuck in the corner, no matter what angle you're at. So if I can fold this mirror just right, and I get it just 90 degrees, you should be able to, from a variety of different angles, you can try to see your reflection in the corner. And the reason why that is that sets up a retroreflector, right? I can prove to you that if you have a 90-degree angle, no matter what direction the light comes in from, it'll bounce back the way it came, right? And if you see that, people who do land surveying have little retroreflectors that they bounce bounce lasers off of to measure, roads and hills and things. And what that is, three sides of the cube at 90 degrees to each other. Because, for example, if the light comes in at a kind of a shallow horizontal angle, it'll bounce off one side of the 90-degree angle at 180 minus that, and then it'll bounce off the other side at 180 minus 180 minus that, which is the same angle, and it'll come back the same angle that it came out. If it was from 45 degrees, it'll be 45 degrees all the way back. If it was a steep angle, it'll be a steep angle all the way out. So, if you play with the geometry, if you want to prove this to yourself, but if you have a 90-degree angle, the light will always come back exactly the way, from exactly the way it came. So you obviously don't want that if you're making a stealth airplane, right? So most airplanes have 90-degree angles at least between where the fins meet the fuselage, or between one tail fin and the other, or a lot of fighters have rectangular air intakes. If you look at an F-15, it's all rectangles and circles or stuff, the worst possible thing one from a radar reflectivity point of view. Then you look at stealth airplanes, right? They have canted tails, and they have intakes that are not rectangular, and those things are to make sure that you don't set up this retroreflector effect.
Do they give up some sort of efficiency with all the different angles, or did
for the canted tails, I don't think they do, because we have detailed plans. Yeah, I think those are fine. The intakes, if they're at an angle like this, they start to get kind of flattened. So you probably have a little more surface area in those intakes than you would if it was a rectangle or a circle. So you probably lose a little bit of intake efficiency, but it's definitely worth it. So you lose a little bit of aerodynamic efficiency. When you make flat, faceted surfaces, you definitely lose a lot of aerodynamic efficiency. That's probably the worst thing from aerodynamics point of view of all the stealth features. And there's other things too. So serpentine intakes, that one's even worse. Serpentine intakes, the idea is if you have your intake with a bend in it, you hide the first compressor stage or the turbofan of the engine. Because that first stage, with all those blades going around, they're going to reflect radar back in every direction. So if you have a bump in your intake to hide your engine behind that, you're going to be much stealthier. So most stealth airplanes have, a serpentine intake. And actually, a lot of airplanes that are only kind of semi-stealthy. There are some airplanes like the Super Hornet. Let's say, we're just going to reduce the radar reflectivity from the front, right? So by the time that it's passing, it's seen from the side and behind. Maybe it's too late, but at least they won't see it coming. And so there's certain things you can do to the front of an airplane to make it less detectable by radar while it's going towards the enemy. And one of them is how the serpentine intakes. But these are aerodynamically not very good at all. Ever since the 727, people have been realizing that it's pretty easy for the airflow to separate, stall on the inside of the intake. And so people put, vortex generators and things on it to make sure you keep the flow attached. So managing the airflow to the serpentine intake is not easy. And that's not exclusive to stealth airplanes. So that's 727 and L-11. Something else is just non-constant radii. So if you can't have rounded surfaces. The B-2 has rounded surfaces as a lot of these UAVs, but they're usually not circular sections. They're usually ellipses or more complicated geometric shapes. And the idea is that if you have a circular shape, then from multiple angles, it'll reflect radar the same intensity, right? If you look at the Christmas ornament, from any angle, you got it all the same. But if you had an oblong, egg-shaped Christmas ornament and you spun it around, your reflection would change size and change shape. So if you have a non-constant radii, then from different angles, the reflection that you get, the intensity will go up and down. It's a little bit more static, so it's harder to lock onto as an individual, thing, right? It looks more like noise because it's less constant. There's other features too, like I said. On the B2, an interesting feature is what's called the toothpick leading edges. So the leading edges are around, which is which one for aerodynamics for most of the leading edges, but then near the corners, which is where a lot of the reflection will happen in different directions, they become thinner. So it's basically like a toothpick that's round in the middle and pointy at the edges. Again, so for most of the leading edge, you're prioritizing aerodynamics, but for the tips, you're prioritizing radar. So the tips are set just an angle, which is why the B2 has that kind of eagle looking nose. And you see this also where control surfaces and slats and things meet their fixed parts of the wings. So all of that is about shape and trying to make sure that photons bounce in another direction. There's a few other things you can do. One is to have radar-absorbent materials. And like I said, that basically is the same as how some things are white and some things are black. So if you paint it black, it will absorb the light that hits it and it won't reflect it, it won't scatter it. So what are the materials that are black to radar, right? That's a question that goes along the line of, well, why are some things green and some things red? Well, it depends on the energy level of the electrons and the vibration resonance of the molecules, and I guess it's more and more physics than I even know. But basically, certain materials will absorb certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. And what they discovered, at least the part that's public, is that carbon ferrite will absorb electromagnetic radiation in the radar frequencies. And certain plastics, like similar to neoprene, will slow down the radar light that's flowing inside it. So when people talk about radar-absorbent materials, it's they're also nicknamed iron balls. So it's basically that neoprene-like plastic with little balls of carbon ferrite inside, and that will supposedly absorb a lot of the radar. But this is a relatively small part of the picture. For early stealth airplanes, maybe for the F-117, sure, the whole thing was covered with radar-absorbent materials. But for newer airplanes, they're really relying on the shape, and it's only on particular parts of the airplane, like where the control surface meets the fixed part of the wing, where you use radar-absorbent materials, just in those spots that you tend to scatter photons back in every direction. So there's only little bits of radar-absorbent material on the F-22 or the V-2 and so on. And another one, and this one is something that people talk about, but there isn't really, I've never seen a report that confirms that yes, this airplane uses this. It's all kind of people theorizing. And they're saying that, you know how noise canceling headphones work, right? They sense that the sound waves, the pressure waves coming in at a certain wave profile, and then they create waves that are opposite to that so that they cancel out the sound waves. And there's no reason why you couldn't do that for radar, right? If you sense in your airplane that you're being hit from radar in a certain direction, and you have a database that knows what your airplane's reflection looks like if it's hit from various directions, you could emit a canceling reflection the way that the radar can. So I've read reports that say, oh, the B2 probably does this, or the FAL in France probably does this, but it's never super firm. It's just kind of no big deal. Something else that you hear reports about say, oh, they're probably doing this, but it's hard to know for sure, is a passive cancellation. So passive cancellation means that you basically try to set up two surfaces. So instead of just having an outer skin in the airplane, you have an outer skin and an inner skin. And if they're separated by a distance that is something and a half times the wavelength of the radar, then the radar that bounces off the outer skin will be half a wavelength off the radar that bounces off the inner skin, and it will naturally cancel itself out, right? And that's basically how iridescence works. Like if you have a pool of oil, the thickness of the oil is something and a half times some wavelength. And in the places where the surface of the oil is something and a half times the red wavelength, the red cancels out this blue. And in places where the thickness of the oil is 1.5 times the wavelength of the blue or the green, that will cancel itself out and look red, right? And because the thickness of the oil is not perfectly consistent, some places will look red, some places will look blue and green. And that's how oil and seashells have that iridescent effect. So if you know what that is for radar, you can try to cancel it out. And you can have, the way you do that is have some kind of, let's say, honeycomb skin, where you have an outer surface and an inner surface. But that relies on knowing the frequency very precisely. So again, it's questionable how well this would actually work. Something else you read about in a kind of, what's the word, speculative tone, is reinforced triangles. So reinforced triangles, the idea is that if you have relatively, imagine like hills or some kind of reflective surfaces. If they're shallow like this, then radar or sound or whatever will bounce right off. But the more deeper and steeper the sides are, the more bounces there would be between something coming in and something coming out. And with each bounce, some of the energy gets absorbed, which is why when you look at an anechoic chamber, where they're testing things for sound or for electronic emissions, you have all these pointing triangles on the wall because the pointing triangles will absorb the energy as it bounces in and out. It will absorb more of the energy because there's more bounces. So people say that, you can maybe include re-entry triangles on the edges of a stealth airplane to help the radar bounce off more surfaces between when it comes in and when it goes out. So again, this sounds kind of speculative to me, but it's one thing that people write about. Actually, before I jump into this part, there's one more really important point that I meant to make in this talk and that I forgot, so let me insert it here. So yeah, sorry, this will be the last time I pause the video to interject something here. What I meant to say, what I meant to include earlier, is that stealth, or low observability, is primarily about how close you can get to the enemy before they see you, right? Stealth is not a black and white thing. It's not like you can say, an F-15 can be seen by radar,
and infrared sensors, but an F-22 cannot, right? That's not true. It's not black and white. There's no such thing as an invisible airplane. What's really the truth and the idea behind stealth is that, if a certain fighter radar can see an F-15 from, let's say, about 200 miles away, then that fighter radar can see an F-22 only if it's less than 10 miles away. Or if some SAM radar can see an F-15 from 50 miles away, it'll only be able to pick out an F-22 if it's identified and lock onto it and fire at it, if the F-22 is less than 2 miles away. And I'm just making up these numbers. But yeah, the idea is that the stealthy airplane is one that needs to be closer to the enemy before the enemy can detect it. Any airplane, whether it's stealthy or not, if it's only 1 mile away from the enemy's going to be able to see it and shoot at it and maybe hit it, right? The question is, what's the distance that if you're that close or closer to an enemy, you're in danger, right? Well, it depends on the enemy's sensors and weapons, but the point is, for a conventional airplane, it can be over 100 miles. While for a stealth airplane, you can get a lot closer before you're detected. So that's really what stealth and low observability is all about. It's not, oh, I'm going to make an invisible airplane, now radar can't see me anymore. It's how close can I get before I'm detected. And yeah, for stealth airplanes, it's going to be a lot closer. All right, so keeping that in mind, on to the next bit of the video here.
So that's all that I'm going to say about like design features. So that's why stealth airplanes are the way to do, and that's some of the features that they may or may not have. Just to finish with a little bit of math, how do you quantify this? How do you model this? What will the mapping look like? You've probably heard of the inverse square law. And the inverse square law says that if you have any kind of energy that's dissipating in 3 dimensions in kind of a sphere, so if you imagine a sound or a flash of light or something, if you're twice as far away, you're going to get 1/4 as much energy. If you're 3 times as far away, you'll get 1/9 as much energy. And the reason is that you basically have a sphere, or maybe it's a square or whatever, some kind of surface that's growing with distance, and that area, the area of that surface will grow as a square of the distance. Right? So if you imagine a sphere of sound or light or whatever growing from its origin, if you're twice, if I'm at some distance to have some energy intensity, if I'm at twice that distance, the sphere will have 4 times the area by the time it gets to me. If I'm 3 times as far away, the sphere will have 9 times the area by the time it gets to me, so the energy gets less concentrated. So now, if you're shooting off photons trying to find something flying around, and they hit the thing, and then they bounce back at you, you have that effect twice. So it's not a square law, it's a 4th power law, right? So if an airplane is at a certain distance, and I shoot photons at it, I get a reflection of a certain intensity. If the airplane is twice as far away, the airplane gets 1/4 as many photons, and I get 1/4 as many photons coming back to me. So the intensity of the reflection goes down by 1/16. If the airplane is 3 times as far away, the intensity of the photons hitting it goes down by 1/9, and the intensity of the photons that come back to me goes down by 1/9, so it's 81 times less intense. So it's a 4th power as a distance. And what that means is, let's say that I have a certain airplane, and I can see it from 100 miles away on radar. I have an F4, and I can see the F4 with a given radar, let's say it's a radar that SAMs use or whatever, from 100 miles away. Let's say I want to make the airplane only detectable by that radar from 10 miles away. So if I want to change the radar detectivity range for a certain airplane design from 100 miles to 10 miles, so it's a factor of 10 distance, that would mean reducing the radar reflectivity of the airplane by a factor of 10,000. You'd have to somehow lose 99.99% of the reflectivity to change the detection distance from 100 miles to 10 miles. Which is why people even bother trying this for a long time. People got this far in the 40s when people were first introducing radar. So can we evade radar? And they say, well, how much would you have to change the radar reflectivity of the airplane? Can you paint it differently or have some shapes that are a little different? Reduce the reflectivity by half? Half's not going to do anything. You need to reduce it by 99.99%. And people just throw their hands up in the air and say, that's practically impossible. Until we got to the 70s and model it and came up with material and so on. But you can see how hard this is. This is what I'm saying. And the way that this is quantified is a radar cross-section. So different shapes will have different radar cross-sections, which basically means how reflective, basically what's the flat area equivalent of the intensity of the reflection as a function of the angle. So as you go around an airplane like we're talking about, you're going to see more or less reflection. And the interesting thing is that a normal airplane, here's an assessment, will be pretty reflective from most directions. If you're hitting the side of the fuselage, you're going to get more of a reflection if you're from straight ahead or from behind. Actually, if you look at an airplane from behind, most surfaces taper down to really thin edges, so actually most of that will bounce away from you. So most airplanes are actually hard to see from behind radar lights. But from other directions, you get more reflection. And then you look at a stealth airplane, like you're an X-45, or even a flat airplane like an X-70, you'll notice that from some directions you get spikes, right? I'm talking about why, because the edges are online and stuff. But from most directions you get a lower number. So for different kinds of airplanes, you get these kinds of graphs. And and figuring out this graph, or at least making a rough prediction of what this graph will look like, is relatively doable. It's not rocket science. Because there are equations, and most of them are pretty common sense, about, well, if you have a certain shape at a certain angle to light that hits it, how intense is the reflection going to be, right? So if you know these kinds of equations, you can take any shape of an airplane, break it up into, squares and spherical and cylindrical surfaces, and calculate for each of them how bright the reflection would be. And that's what they started doing in the 70s with computers that allowed them to start quantifying, what the radar reflectivity would be, and then how do you make a design where you get a nice reflectivity. So you have different airplanes. It can be, for stealth airplanes, you get a few spikes, but most of it is relatively low. And obviously what I'm saying now vastly oversimplifies this. There are whole books that explain the real physics of this. Like whether the airplane is an L or composite will change how it sends radar photons back out. And I keep saying, oh yeah, the light hits the surface and goes off at the same angle, but that's not true. There's some scatter, right? So instead of there being one angle that you can see the photons from, there's going to be a distribution of intensity. And then the question is, well, how sensitive is the radar? How many degrees of range do you get, and so on. So it's not easy in black and white, honestly. So like I said, all the stuff that I said right now is public and comes from reading different books. Bill Sweetman writes a lot of books about stealth airplanes that are pretty good. In fact, if I had to recommend just one, I think I'd recommend Lucky Stealth. That's my favorite. Although the one inside the stealth bomber is really good too. But there's a whole bunch of them out there. And so all the things that I said today basically come from these books. That's it. Are there any questions or thoughts or anything?
The surface, if I remember correctly, reading, they've got to keep the aircraft inside when you're talking about the scatter. So in a lot of stealth aircraft, it's not a smooth surface. That it's a built-in bumpy surface.
To build in some noise. So
Yeah.
You don't get I see what you're saying. So that's what I'm going to say when I said about when I talk about the non-constant radar. Is that if your surface is too smooth and also too circular or spherical or cylindrical, that means you're getting, as the airplane changes its angle, you get basically the same intensity back.
Yeah.
But if you make the surface a little more wobbly and a little less perfect, then you'll get some up and down, some changes in your intensity of the reflection, and make it harder to
Remember that there are two definitions of the surface of an airplane, at least, and one is the aerodynamic surface, and the other is the surface that reflects radar.
Right.
And they aren't the same. The iron ball with the neoprene surrounding, the neoprene isn't going to reflect radar.
Right. But it's going to slow down the radar. So
It'll slow it down, it doesn't reflect it as a smooth surface. Whereas the iron ball underneath it has its own radar evading properties. So the two together give you an aerodynamic surface that flies well, and a radar absorbing surface that can't be seen.
That's a good point. And a lot of materials like fiberglass and foam are pretty much invisible to radar. So if you need an aerodynamic surface of a certain shape, but an airplane or a radar reflective surface of a different shape, you can build your fiberglass on the outside and your metal whatever on the inside.
And that's how we're doing modern stealth fighters that look like ones that do.
Right.
We learned some lessons.
All right.
The list of which airplanes are better than others, like B-2 and...
Well, as you can probably guess, they keep those numbers pretty close to the vest. But there are some of the numbers out there. Some numbers say, the radar cross-section of a B-2 from dead ahead is, some number like 3 square feet or something like that. Which basically means you take a 3 square foot sheet of aluminum and hold it up like this and shine radar at it. That's about how intense the return would be for the whole B-2. Maybe it's not even that, maybe it's 1 square foot. It's something crazy. Or you hear people say, the F-17 is about the same as a bird. I forget which kind of bird it is. It's a swallow or an eagle or something. But there are not precise numbers out there, but some slightly quantified answers are out there.
Is there numbers on how far away they can be detected?
Oh, no, that's the thing. All you can really quantify is the reflection has a certain intensity. And then you can use your power of 4 rule to say, well, depending on how far away I am, here's how powerful a reflection I'm going to get. And depending on how sensitive your radar is, you'll know from what distance you can see it. So if you have a very, 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 very sensitive radar, you can pick these airplanes up from quite far away. It just depends on how good your radar is. And so yeah, realistically, given the radars that exist, most of these airplanes can only be picked up from, say, a few miles away, at which point it's hopefully too late. And although another twist to that is that, like I said, with the infrared cameras, the radar makers will go to air shows and take their, whether it's an air-to-air radar for a fighter or a SAM or whatever, and they'll take it to air shows and say, oh, I can pick up the radar reflectivity from that F-22 or that B-2, and now I have some numbers about how far away they are, or how bright they look versus how far away. Except when they're flying stealth airplanes at air shows and other public events that people expect, they'll usually, deflect the control surfaces, like one up, one down a little bit. Or the B-2 will have its air brakes out just a little bit. Just enough to make a huge difference on the reflectivity. So you don't really know how stealthy B-2 is or how stealthy an F-22 is from an air show. Because they'll always have their control surfaces, cranked just a little bit to scatter more radar in more directions. But in reality, they're going to be more stealthy than, a radar at an air show would. Let's see if you find a picture of the B-2. Like every picture of the B-2, the brake rotors and the wingtips are open just a little bit. They're never all the way closed. Just kind of, never, but very, very open.
Okay, so from your prior presentation, does the B2 move well? How high does it?
I don't know. Well, because the B2 is a flying wing, I think the range of angles of attack that it's allowed to fly is relatively narrow. So from that point of view, I don't think I'd want to loop it. So my previous presentation about aerobatics, I said, you can loop an airplane depending on the ratio of the max speed to the minimum speed and so on. And during my course, when I talk about flying wings, I point to a really interesting YouTube video. It's a talk given by a B2 test pilot that talks about test flying, the Northrop flying wings in general, not just the B2, but what's in the past. And as we know, Edwards Air Force Base was named after someone who was test flying a flying wing and passed away because they tried to stall it and it didn't go very well at all. So as they were test flying the B2, at different speeds, it'll stall at different angles of attack. And so during that flight test, they were kind of surprised by the stall behavior. It stalled at a lower angle of attack than they expected. And that makes me think that if your range of angles of attack is relatively restricted for safe flight, then your range of speeds and how many G's people is relatively restricted. So it's probably not very aerobatic. That's a good question.
You know how we have these very large telescope antennas spread over the world?
The radar telescopes?
Yeah, radar telescopes.
Or radio telescopes?
Yeah, when they are studying different star systems and things like that, right? So similarly, let's say if you spread out radar signal sources, detectors, on the ground, across the US or anywhere for that matter, and then somehow use algorithms to average out your radio signals in real time, you should be able to find from any direction, right? From any direction.
So there's a couple of, so I'm not an expert in radar physics, but I know a little bit just from waves and stuff. And there's two things that I think come on that. One is, most radars nowadays, but a lot of military radars nowadays are not an antenna that points in different directions. They're phased arrays, right? So you have multiple detectors on a plane, and then, for example, where they're watching out for reflection. For reflection, let's say you have multiple reflectors, vertical, like multiple vertical wires like this. If a wave comes from that direction, they'll hit bang, 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 and from that change in the timing of when the radar or when the energy hits the different detectors, it came from that one. It's this one first and this one. If it comes from straight ahead or straight behind, it'll come all at the same time. So depending on the offset of the timing from when it hits one to when it hits the other, you can get the direction, which is kind of like how your ears can get the direction, right? So that's one part. So they already kind of work that way. So you're already sensing every direction every time, and then when you get something, just from the timing, you can see from the relative timing of how it hits, and maybe some interferometry, you can tell which direction it came from. And then the other thing is, the size of the radar very much determines how sensitive it is. Not just from I can get this amount of energy if I have a bigger antenna, but just from the fact that if the antennas, if the receivers are further apart, you basically have more aperture, and you can detect smaller things. And for example, I think probably the clearest description of that is that I got from Auto Republic sphere is when you read about space-based radar. Because there's this idea of launching satellites that once they're up in space can maybe unfold a multiple 100-foot long set of antennas. It doesn't have to be one big dish. It can just be a rod with little antennas on it. But the fact that the furthest ones are hundreds of feet apart means that you're going to get much better resolution. You can pick up solar speeds from the Doppler sense. You can pick up ground vehicles. So there's definitely that idea of how do you make it big without making one dish that's half a mile wide. Space, projecting an airplane flying in formation. You hear about those ideas. Although I think if anyone's made any real advancements on that front, they're not talking.
It doesn't apply to us in GA anyway.
No.
Violated with ADSP.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, you guys learned something interesting.
There's
What's that?
Was this one your Oshkosh?
No, this one. So I proposed 4 talks at Oshkosh, and they took 3 of them. This one they didn't take. That's part of why I offered Dave to be here. It's like, well, there's one talk that I haven't given in a while. That I haven't given because I didn't go to Oshkosh.
How did it go at Oshkosh? Obviously you gave the talk.
It went very well. I mean, we can, like you said, you want to talk about Oshkosh in general, we can just chat about Oshkosh. You didn't go this year, right?
Yeah, I was